The Shinju might be the monsters kicking in the front door, but Amado just reminded everyone that the guy calmly sitting in the basement with a loaded gun can be a whole lot scarier. This chapter somehow turned a conversation, a cigarette, and a man with his eyes hidden into one of the most unsettling sequences that Boruto's given us in a long time, which is honestly impressive because making a scientist feel terrifying should qualify as its own Kekkei Genkai. Between Sarada willingly walking into Code's trap, Kashin Koji learning that the future has multiple blind spots, and Amado quietly pulling the strings like the world's most sleep-deprived chess master, Chapter 36 wasn't just setting up the next fight, it was rewriting the whole storyboard itself. So join your OBC, your original Boruto chief, for this review of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, because we got a lot to unpack here. Every hidden detail, callback, and piece of visual storytelling in this chapter, because there's way more here than first meets the eye. We open up this chapter with a flashback that shows us what led to Amado ordering Kawaki to capture Kashin Koji, with Kawaki telling Amado that he'll help capture Kashin Koji, but only as long as him doing so doesn't get in the way of Kawaki taking down the remaining Shinju. After taking a pause, Amado eases Kawaki's worries by saying that everything he's doing is in service of his daughter, and that is why he too wants to get rid of Jura as well, which is another reminder of Kawaki's condition he had for working with Amado in Chapter 18 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. Akibi will be revived, but only after the awakened Shinju, Code, and Boruto are all destroyed, not before and not after, and in that order. Knowing this, Amado gives himself some cover by telling Kawaki that his reasons for wanting to speak to Kashin Koji, they are personal, and it's a pretty smart thing to do here. It shows Amado's understanding about the human mind and how it responds to intimacy. Just as people will likely look away from two people kissing on the lips, the same thing happens when you tell someone that you have personal business to attend to, because in both situations, most people don't want to feel as if they're intruding on a moment. As we'll see later on, this was really Amado hedging his bets to keep Kawaki out the room when he did speak to Kashin Koji, because of what we learned about Jura and Kawaki, which is very smart. Being ever cautious, Amado remarks how fast Kawaki said he'd agree, and even dangles out the question of, "You sure you don't want me to explain?" But someone who knows Kawaki well enough to manipulate him into reawakening his coma seal already knew the answer that Kawaki was about to give. His one-track mind is all on destroying everyone on that list that is a threat to Naruto. Everything else is inconsequential to Kawaki. With Kawaki now in check, Amado asks Kawaki to scan for Boruto's location to make sure he's not with Kashin Koji, and upon hearing that Boruto is hiding within the village by masking his chakra, he orders Kawaki to be ready to go after Kashin Koji, and that they're basically rolling the dice that Kashin Koji has not received another 10 Directions update, and so they can catch him off guard. It is a gamble, but as we've seen with Amado in part 1, he isn't above taking gambles. He's the guy at the casino counting cards. It's only cheating if you're caught, and you're basically weighing probabilities, like he did assuming Naruto and Sasuke could outlast Ishiki long enough that Ishiki would die, and his bluff about the bomb around Shikadai's neck wouldn't be caught before he got his meeting with Shikamaru. Meanwhile, back at the Hokage Tower, the drum beats and the slow march towards Shikamaru's removal as Hokage begins to rush towards its climax. Kobu is meeting with the two elders, and he's meeting with Sai, recalling everything that happened, stating they had no memory of everything that took place between the start of his conversation with Shikamaru and Momoshiki suddenly appearing before him before Boruto was there to save him. However, as Sai sings the praises of Boruto, how he easily took down 6 of the Momoshiki clones before Kobu could be harmed, Kobu and the elders, they are skeptical, and we see the intelligence of Kobu on full display here. Prior to this, in the short time he'd been in Konoha, he'd already worked through enough to figure out Shikamaru was working with Boruto, and now the attack happened. He knows that he doesn't have all the details, but he's got enough to tell the feudal lord remove Shikamaru, and we see exactly why Kashin Koji told Boruto it was in their best interest that Kobu die. Kobu tells the elders that whole situation was manipulated and that nothing lined up as it appeared. Boruto just happened to be in the area at the exact moment he was about to be killed, and exactly exactly when he had a blank space in his memory he can't account for. Kobu isn't a shinobi himself. However, he knows he's inside of a ninja village. Shinobis are masters of deception. It's why part 1 of Naruto hammered home repeatedly the need to see through deception. Kobu knows that for a ninja, placing someone under genjutsu or using some other technique to control their body is a very easy task, particularly for a non-shinobi target like himself. It's at this point that Sai begins to worry, realizing his own son Inojin is in danger as he has a flashback to Inojin accidentally calling him dad and trying to play it off. Kobu brushes off Sai's backhanded comment by saying that it isn't just Boruto and Shikamaru working together. There are also others conspiring with Boruto as well. And even though he thinks Shikamaru might be getting forced to do so, it basically doesn't matter because Shikamaru is working with a Hokage killer and a known traitor. The elders, who made it very clear in chapter 6 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex where they stand with Shikamaru as Hokage, they take the opportunity to say Boruto is likely working with the Shinju, and when Kobu declares everyone working with Boruto guilty of treason, Sai tries to step in to bring the temperature down, but Kobu doubles down on everything. He says Boruto escaped in chapter 14 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex because of Shikamaru's help, and he reveals he's already sent word to the feudal lord that Shikamaru should be removed as Hokage and charged with treason, and he's just waiting on the feudal lord to sign off on it. Now, this likely has you asking the question, why does the feudal lord have so much power over the Hokage when one is a shinobi and the other is just a rich guy with no fighting experience? The short answer is that the feudal lord is the one who owns all the land in the Land of Fire and has all the money, including the money that the Hokage needs to keep the village running. The longer answer and more complicated answer is in the video I'll have in the description box and info cards in the upper right hand corner, which is called Why Naruto Villages Don't Turn Against the Feudal Lords. Shifting gears, Shikamaru is at work in the Hokage office, and suddenly he gets contacted by the sensor unit, who come to him with a rather baffling report. The chakra of Jiraiya was just registered as having entered into Konoha, which set off the alarm bells for whatever sensory ninja working the logs, and if they were old enough to be aware of Jiraiya, they'd know that in universe, Jiraiya has been dead for 19 years. Shikamaru hears this and quickly realizes it's Kashin Koji, and he asks where was the chakra spot at last, and he tells the sensor unit reporting to him to keep this classified info. Really bad for Shikamaru because all these transmissions, they are being logged, and Kobu is on his ass. Now, if you're hearing this and going, wait, that's a plot hole, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to exhale, because that isn't the case. Yes, Kashin Koji in the manga continuity of Boruto Naruto Next Generations entered into Konoha undetected, and he stayed there for several days without being found. Yes, that was specifically because he was a clone of Jiraiya, and so he has Jiraiya's chakra signature, so it wouldn't register as a foreign chakra like he explained to Delta in chapter 28 of Boruto Naruto Next Generations. But you have to remember context. Kashin Koji knew that the Yamanaka clan, they registered chakra, that they monitored everything, and he specifically tells Delta that she has to stay out. And when you look at the manga panel, the word "you" is bolded as he tells her to stay put before he rushes off. Koji knew he wouldn't set alarm bells off because he is a clone, but the reason that Kashin Koji could stay in the village undetected is because of a jutsu called the chakra suppression jutsu, which is why the whole time he was in the village, Naruto never picked up on Kashin Koji's presence, even when using Sage Mode, and when Kurama was active inside of Naruto, he never picked up on him either, because controlling your emotions is also part of keeping your chakra hidden, because your emotions are linked to your yin chakra, and a spike in them can make your chakra fluctuate briefly, like we saw when C briefly since Karin's chakra in the 5 Kage summit in Naruto chapter 461 when she was suppressing her chakra. The reason all this matters is look at Kashin Koji's current situation. He's been transported to the lab. He is unconscious, meaning his chakra is at rest. Even without molding your chakra, it will be picked up by the sensory unit because it's not being suppressed. And that's what happened. However, that speaks to how desperate Amado is for answers, which makes their conversation so very fascinating. fascinating. When Kashin Koji wakes up with heavy restraints on his body from a full body bind to chakra handcuffs, Amado first compliments Koji on managing to stay alive against Ishiki, and when Koji replies, he basically tells Amado he knew what the stakes were when he took on that mission. It may not seem like much, but this is Ikimoto taking the opportunity to deploy what we in literature like to refer to as a false gun, which are one of the two guns that are referenced by people who study the craft of writing, with the other one being a Chekhov's gun. Unlike a Chekhov's gun, which has the belief that every small detail that is introduced must come back into the story in a meaningful way, like a gun on the nightstand, by the end of that story, that gun has to be used at least once or else it was pointless. Unlike that school of thought, a false gun is when a writer introduces something that intentionally gets the attention of readers or characters in universe. The false gun in this case is that Ishiki says in chapter 48 of Boruto Naruto Next Generations that Kashin Koji had run off to confront Amado. 6 years later, they finally meet and no fireworks go off like Ishiki and readers had expected. However, that's not to say that their conversation doesn't move the plot forward, because it does, and it does so in a massive way. Amado gets right down to business and he brings up how Kashin Koji's power at 10 directions work, and he knows that Koji got his last update and that he saw it 4 days before the battle with Momoshiki, and that in that moment he realized that Kashin Koji hadn't gotten a future update. So Amado came up with this plan knowing that Kashin Koji's 10 directions had a set of blind spots. He can't see new developments at will when a new timeline goes opposite of what he previously saw, and so Amado knew he had a short window to act. He takes the moment to tell Kashin Koji that this is his biggest and most fatal flaw at 10 directions, and he gets on to Kashin Koji about being too reliant on the power of 10 directions, particularly relying on the power to see the future before it happens and use it as a crutch. And that is a nice callback to Naruto Part 1 that the story did here, as well as a callback to the lessons that Naruto and Sasuke tried to pass down to Boruto and Kawaki in Boruto Part 1, which is the concept of balance. In Naruto chapter 64, Iruka teaches this to Team 7 by stating the message that the third Hokage wrote inside the scroll was about balance, to train both the mind and the body. That for Naruto, he needed to work on his mind because he relies too much on his body, and for Sakura, she needed to work harder on her body because she relied too much on her mind. Boruto evolves this with Sasuke, and with Naruto teaching Boruto and Kawaki the importance of using scientific ninja tools, but never letting them be a replacement for their own skills as shinobi. And now Amado is given the same lecture to Kashin Koji, and it is ironic, given that Kashin Koji is a clone of Jiraiya, one of the greatest ninja to ever exist in Naruto, and yet he's in the position he's in because he wasn't balanced. Just goes to show you that genetics aren't everything, and that work by the individual is still most important. After giving Kashin Koji his quick lecture, Amado tells him that he experimented on Kashin Koji's body while he was unconscious, and that since Kashin Koji is liable to ask Ada in the future, there was no reason to keep it a secret. In particular, Amado altered the brainwaves of Kashin Koji, and that the information he gains from 10 directions could be of use to them. But while Kashin Koji still has many blind spots and weaknesses in the jutsu, in particular his inability to control when the visions happen and how long the visions take between visions, so Amado looks at this and he has a pretty logical answer for it. I'll experiment on your body, which I already did, and it'll cut down on how long you have to wait between visions. When Koji gives him the side eye, Amado replies that he's basically Kashin Koji's parent, and that he's the one who created him. And even though he makes that comparison, it is a dark reminder about a theme that the Boruto story has been touching on since part 1 of the story, in particular in the manga continuity, and to a lesser degree the anime continuity of the story, which is its own separate story. That theme is the loss of agency. To someone like Amado, the people who he experiments on, to pump them full of ninja tech on a cellular level to make them into cyborgs. So people like Kawaki, Code, Ada, Damon, they're just objects to be used. They aren't truly viewed as humans so much as test subjects and tools. The same applies to cyborgs like Delta and Kashin Koji, one a clone of his daughter with a modified body and the other a clone of Jiraiya, also with a modified body. The Otsutsuki take the same approach, a blatant disregard for the agency of those who they make into vessels. At the end of the extraction process, the soul of the vessel ceases to exist against their will, and the Otsutsuki, they are reborn. Orochimaru in the Boruto anime continuity has a bomb on the heart of Mitsuki, and at one point he even thought about removing Mitsuki's memories until his mind changed, because a clone is his intellectual property as its creator. Amado is being used to once again push that message here. Koji had no say, and he's the one restrained, even if it was for his own benefit. The fact remains that his agency as a human being was ignored by the whims and the overall needs of Amado. Amado pushes that conversation along further by instructing Kashin Koji to look at the clone of his daughter Akibi, and we see what Amado envisions will happen when Kawaki finally places the Koma Seal in her body. The belief is that since Kawaki's Koma has her genetic information and memories inside of it, that she will be reborn similar to how Otsutsuki are reborn, which if you're one of the people asking why didn't Amado use Edo Tensei to revive her, or why didn't he get Sasuke to do it via Rini rebirth, Edo Tensei requires a human sacrifice and Akibi would still be dead, not actually alive, and Sasuke using the art of the Rini rebirth would cost Sasuke his life based on the retcon made in Naruto's 4th Great Ninja War and the 4th Naruto data book. The jutsu's not tied to chakra levels like Nagato thought. I will leave a video down in the description box that explains that in further detail if you are still skeptical. However, Amado basically says that that was his plan to use the Koma. But I need to know, in any of the visions of the future that you saw, did you ever see a moment where my daughter was revived? Koji answers him, and the answer is a dark one. And it's a good thing that Kawaki's not in here when he says it. He says he retains the memories of everything he sees with 10 Directions, and that at no point did he ever see Amado's daughter revive, and it's because Jura kills Kawaki in every future he saw. What's interesting here is that Amado, the whole time Kashin Koji is saying this, Ikimoto purposely doesn't show Amado's expression with his eyes. Just like back in chapter 33 of Boruto 2 Vortex, when Amado first hears that Momoshiki attacked the village sooner than his vision showed, and Amado realized that Kashin Koji could see the future, Ikimoto purposely does not show you his eyes. The glasses, when he hears about the first update, are completely shaded out, and then when Sumire is shown looking back at Amado, after Amado got that realization, we don't see Amado's face or eyes at all. File that away because it is visual storytelling being used here to push the story forward later, and this won't be the last time this happens in the chapter. It happens quite a bit. Upon hearing this, Amado takes one last puff of his cigarette before letting Kashin Koji go, saying he can't wait to see the next 10 Directions update. And once again, we don't see Amado's eyes when he speaks about the next 10 Directions update. All while Shikamaru is pissed off outside the lab because Amado has changed the code to keep him out of that lab. Meanwhile, back at Orochimaru's hideout, Boruto teleports back inside just when Kashin Koji is reverse summoned to the hideout, and he immediately demands that Inojin put him into contact with Shikamaru and Ada to have her look up what Amado did to him while he was asleep, because the idea of 5 nights at Amado's rightfully has Kashin Koji spooked. However, just as Ada gives him a piece of her mind for how pushy he is being, Kashin Koji's eyes suddenly roll into the back of his head and he falls over, and as he gets new visions, we see Amado once again with his face not being shown and the suspicious sound effect Kanji added, which at this rate Amado is never beating those sussy Baka allegations. Elsewhere, Sarada replays her conversation with Boruto from before about how he wanted her to allow Code to capture her, and she cuts her Sharingan on as she looks around for claw marks, which makes sense. Sharingan sees chakra as a color, so she would be able to spot them if they are in her line of sight. Sarada then looks down an alley alley and suddenly decides, I'm going to enter the alley, believing it'd be easier for Code to attack her if she was alone, and she wasn't wrong. On the underside of one of the buildings, Code's eye is watching from a claw mark, and he waits until she is directly underneath him to pounce, and when he does, Sarada's Sharingan is now turned off because she is allowing herself to be caught as planned. However, as all of this is going on, Kashin Koji gets another update via 10 directions, seeing the future timelines play out. Hidari is shown, Boruto is activating his karma is shown before he hunches over, a new Ten Tails claw grime is shown, Code is shown attacking Sarada, Sarada's other Mangekyo Sharingan eye is bleeding because she's using it for the first time, and Jura is making a bowl of Super One vision. More importantly, in the upper right corner, we see someone picking up Sarada's earring off of the ground, likely Boruto, given the positioning of Boruto on the same page, and that's going to be important to file away. Back to Sarada, when she turns her head to react to Code, the claw mark appears at her feet, and Code slams her face first into the ground and is attempting to push her through the claw mark, yet simultaneously, Koji keeps seeing more glimpses of the future. This time, Hidari versus Sarada is happening. Jura is having tea with either Shikamaru or Shikadai. Not clear which one is shown here because of how it's drawn. Konohamaru is shown, and so too is a smirking Kobu and Moegi. More importantly, the Hokage cap is shown on the desk, likely a future where Shikamaru is removed as Hokage. And the most troubling thing of all, Momoshiki is in possession of Boruto's body, and the horn has reemerged, and the other eye is closed to show that he is suppressing Boruto's will, meaning this was a forcible moment, as it appears as if Himawari and Kawaki are the ones confronting Boruto. This rightfully has Kashin Koji scared out of his mind, and he quickly tells Boruto that he can't overreact to the news he's about to tell him, which is that their plan to use Sarada as a decoy is going to fail, and in real time we see the function of Code's brand new arm on full display. It's designed to pick up on Boruto's chakra, and since Boruto's Flying Raijin markers are on Sarada, his arm is able to summon them to Code. This is where we see one of the drawbacks to using your jutsu too much. People can figure out how it works, and while Code might be dumb, he still figured out Boruto uses Flying Raijin to teleport to those markers, and that Sarada was planning to let herself be captured so that they could raid the Ten Tails hideout. Sarada immediately realizes her position, so she cuts on her Mangekyo Sharingan, this time for the one eye we've never seen her use before, but it is far too late. She's already face down on the claw mark, and Code shoves her into it, and he smugly tells her she was too late to act. Back at the hideout, Boruto locks onto his markers, and he teleports to Konoha despite Kashin Koji warning him not to do so, and Boruto arrives just seconds after Code's already escaped. This time, he's shouting Sarada's name. This chapter overall was a very strong chapter that ends with a very nasty cliffhanger for what is the end of Boruto Tubu Vortex Volume 9 and the second chapter of this new arc. It clearly escalated things, and it raised the stakes for multiple ongoing storylines while setting seeds for more storylines in the future, which feels like the beginning stages of transitioning us to where the story will go once Jura is defeated. From the use of paneling, like how Amado's positioned at various points, to how the film roll of 10 directions shows multiple possible futures, and how Ikimoto positions key moments in the film roll in prominent positions while having smaller plot twists. Those details are hidden where you can barely see them, but if you catch them, you get an idea of where the story's going. Like, for instance, the Hokage hat that is at the upper edge, or for the other one, you have Momoshiki in control of Boruto, and you have Code capturing Sarada. They're very easy to see. Your eyes gravitate towards them immediately, whereas the smaller details are drawn purposely smaller so you don't actually see them. That way, the plot twists hit the way that they should. It accomplishes the goal of the story hidden behind the story here. The same with there being multiple callbacks to Part 1 of Naruto, while continuing to show us how morally flexible both Amado is and the lengths that he would go to for reviving his daughter, to Kashin Koji being willing to set aside his past with Amado because it's mutually beneficial, and to see that contrasted with the very human reactions of Boruto when he learns that Sarada is in danger, and Sai when he realizes Kobu will likely figure out that Inojin helped Boruto. It's a brilliant contrast that I don't think is being appreciated enough, particularly the Sai and Amado one. Amado referred to himself as a parent to Kashin Koji, but he didn't act like a parent. He acted like a owner of a tool school, whereas Sai acted like a parent when he realized his child was in danger. Brilliant writing that is very subtle and very easy to miss. Overall, I give this a very rare 5 out of 5 ramen bowls. The start of volume 10 of Tubu Vortex has big shoes to fill here, but while this chapter review might be over, your time here doesn't have to be over. You can click here for the full Boruto story playlist to relive the whole Boruto story, or you can click here for this Naruto explained video that YouTube says you would probably enjoy.